Welcome to the Speak by Design podcast, where we study personal style, message structure, and message strategy so you can become a consistently compelling force. Let's dig in. One of the greatest achievements of a leader is building a great team around them. And that's why this topic is so important. It's the skill of being able to coach others. And we even have a half-day training called Coaching Others to Greatness that goes deeply into practicing all 5 of these skills that make a great coach. So what I'm going to share are 5 elements of coaching or stages of coaching or even skills and tools in the coach's toolkit. All right, so here they are. Number 1 is that the coach is able to establish a relationship rooted in trust. So this is why it's really hard to go to a one-day training and really feel coached, because you didn't build a relationship with that trainer before the session. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of learning firms like to have a private session first before you go into a group training. And that helps establish that foundation of trust. And in that skill, that's your ability to be transparent about yourself with the other person. So as a leader, talking about your own learning journey, talking about your life outside of work, who you are, what matters to you, and getting the other person to share as well. All right, so that's step 1. And if you jump straight into giving someone feedback and you haven't established a relationship, it's really difficult, really difficult. And often the other person has already put up some resistance or their defensiveness has shown, and they're not listening to you the right way. They're not hearing the wisdom of what you've shared in the feedback. Second element is you and the other person setting learning expectations. How does the person you're coaching want to grow? Now, if this is one-sided coaching where it's not a mutual long-term working relationship, both sides don't need to share. But I always really enjoyed sharing my own learning journey and expectations and letting my direct report share theirs. So they knew I was wanting to grow too. Here were the things I wanted to learn and take risks on and push myself on, so that when they knew what I wanted to learn, then they felt invited to dream as well on how they want to learn. So see if you can make it two-sided, but if you're being paid to coach someone, that's not really relevant. Just let the person you're coaching share what they want to learn. Then the third stage is the actual practicing. You can call that building capabilities, training. You could sometimes people say coaching, but I want you to think that coaching is all 5 of these things. So let's call this third one building capabilities. This is where you teach someone how to make a financial model. This is where you teach someone step by step how to use the software. This is where you provide a job aid or make a learning video and watch it with the person and have them share back to you what they learned from it, what was unclear. Have them teach it back to you. If you're working on a presentation, have the person present to you. Maybe even show them how you would present it and get their feedback, and then do it again. It's the repetition of practice before the real event. And that could be an actual event or before the deliverable is due. Now, the fourth element is after the event. It's the post-game analysis. And it's what most people think that coaching is feedback. But that coaching it has to include the practicing part, or it's not really fair to the person. It's really just an evaluation. But really good feedback is rooted in observation and the individual who's giving their feedback in their opinion. So for example, if I said to you, I noticed you used a lot of filler words, it gave me the impression this was the first time you've said this out loud. That's my impression. Somebody else might have said, you used a lot of filler words, made you sound casual and relaxed. I kind of liked it. So other people will have a different impression. That's my impression. The person can take it or leave it. When you are dealing with a real performance issue where somebody lied or made a mistake and it had a huge financial impact, this softer way is going to sound different. It's going to be the mistake was made here. Here was the impact it had on the work. How can we make sure it doesn't happen again? But if you have that established trust in the beginning, you've set learning expectations of sometimes we're going to try things, sometimes they're going to fail. It's going to be okay. And you practice together and you have given this feedback, it's going to resonate with the person. It's going to be taken the right way. Now, feedback, because so far we're talking about this in a coaching relationship that feels very clear to people, that the leader is coaching their direct report. But you can be using all of this when coaching a client. It can go to a peer as well. It can even go to a leader, a senior leader. So like you could be coaching a senior leader. So please don't think of this as only the classic hierarchy of I'm only coaching people who are more junior to me. All right, then the fifth element, which is the element that sometimes people think doesn't matter to them because they're not a therapist, they're not a life coach or an executive coach, or there to really listen. But that is the last piece of the puzzle. It's the counseling piece. And every great leader needs to be able to close their mouth and truly listen without judgment, to take in the person they're coaching, take in that person's point of view. I guarantee you'll learn something. But sometimes you have very authoritarian leaders who have been the doers, the builders, the creators. They are the visionaries, and they don't always, I should say, they don't always listen well. So for those of you who think you might fall into that bucket, this is the one to focus on. And in general, I feel like where we skip steps, we skip the step of building the relationship because we're excited to start the project and we just jump into the project. We assign roles and responsibilities, but we don't really establish any kind of friendship or relationship before throwing out tasks and expectations of due dates. The other part is the learning piece. That second piece, that's really the motivating piece. That's the part that's going to stay with them through till month 7. I don't know if you've heard this, but usually around month 7 in a big project, there's a lag in motivation. Well, if you set those learning expectations, you as the coach could say, now listen, I know around month 7, we're going to have a lag in motivation. What are we going to do about that? Let's go ahead and mark the calendar now that we need to have an offsite, that we need to get together even as a one-on-one and figure out what we've learned and what we want to further learn going forward. But regularly talking about what are we learning and what do we want to learn is so motivating to people. Now that third piece of the practice time, this one also gets shortchanged. Think about big presentations you have with clients or senior leaders. Does the whole team get together 2 days before and rehearse and give each other feedback? No. Quite often people are rushing and throwing the slides together, making changes and putting all of their efforts on the paper and not the practice of the message. So see if you can put more focus on the practice so that people are ready and wanting that feedback. The more time you spend practicing, the more open people are to feedback because they know you didn't set them up to fail. And then the counseling element. So let me explain how this was taught to me, which was do not jump into the muck with the person you're coaching. So if the person says, oh, I'm really struggling with this person, this other person I'm working with is difficult, it is not appropriate if you're truly coaching and trying to counsel in that moment to say, oh, that person is awful. Oh, they sound terrible to work with. We don't want to validate anything. We want to just take it in and listen. The less you say, the better. The more empathetic and caring you are, the better. Now, empathetic does not mean that you start commiserating with them. And let's say they are wanting to leave the organization. You might have a lot of feelings about that. You might want to say, "How dare you leave? I've spent so much time investing in you. We just gave you a promotion. You're in the middle of a project." But that's not the right time to say any of that. That time when somebody is courageous enough to tell you they're thinking about leaving, that is the time to listen and say, "Oh," I mean, you can still show emotion of like, "Oh no, we're going to be so sad to lose you. How far are you in the process? What's going on? How are you making a decision on this?" And get them to share with you. Please think about the best coaches you've had and the worst coaches you've had for a moment. We've all had an experience with both sides of that equation. The coaches who have stuck with me, the teachers I've had that I still think about, they're the ones who believed in me. So one thing I haven't mentioned so far is how important it is when you're coaching someone else to believe that they are limitless. Just because they failed in the past doesn't mean they're going to fail again. And just because they were successful in the past doesn't mean they're going to succeed again. People need nurturing and they need to prepare for every event. Just because you practiced a presentation a year ago doesn't mean the next time you give a similar presentation, it's going to be excellent. It's easy to anchor people and define people by past events. See if you can walk away from that and just constantly believe that the person is going to be successful so that you're coaching them from a place of positivity, abundance. You're looking at them like a nurturing parent would. Now, the other thing I've also really enjoyed about coaches is that in the moments where I changed the most, it did hurt a little what they said. And the reason it hurt me a little to hear it was because I already knew it. On some level, I believed it was I already knew that that was true. I was hiding it from myself, and then it hurt because others noticed it. So ask yourself that, is the reason it hurts because there is a degree of truth in it? Now for the bad coaches. These are the ones who are projecting their own issues on those around them. They haven't matured themselves. They may have stopped maturing around age 15 or 16, and they still don't really know who they are. When you receive advice from someone like this, it is just interesting. You don't need to overreact to it. You can say, "Oh, that's interesting. I can see why they would say that given how they perform, given what issues they've had in their past." You don't have to forgive them, but understand where it's coming from and that it really is not about you. If this is happening, you may want to find a new role or move away from this person. You're not a good fit for working with this colleague. Now, what about for communication coaching? Because communication coaching is what we do at Speak by Design. How do we approach clients and use these 5 elements? We do use all 5. And so for one, when we meet with someone, we do want to establish a relationship and make sure that they understand that what they're talking about with us is confidential, and everything we do aligns to the mission of helping them become a consistently compelling force. And it is about them reaching as far into their full potential as possible. The second piece, though, of setting learning expectations, asking the question, who do you want to be? What types of speakers do you admire? Another question I like is, if we were designing your character for a movie, who would play you? If there's an actor you can think of, or how would you define the character? What is the character like? The ideal version of the character. Another one is, asking a question, in 5 years, what kind of leader are you? Describe yourself to me. How do you behave in meetings? What do you like in a presentation? How do you handle conflict? Getting them to envision who they're becoming. Even questions about how do you spend your free time? That's setting learning expectations, then coming up with the topics. And we always like to have a 10-topic plan and say, here are our topics. How would you sequence these? Which one is most important? What audiences should we gear these topics toward? Is it all toward senior leadership? For example, a topic might be strong starts and closes, or message structure, or handling questions and objections. Well, is that handling questions and objections with leadership or with your direct reports or with your clients? So putting an audience to every topic. Having that learning plan is also really motivating. And people want to ask for learning and invite your feedback more readily when they know there is a learning plan. Then that third piece is the practice. And for the work that we do, we ask that people always have a message in mind, something they need buy-in on. So they're coming to every session with a topic or an ask that they need to be proposing inside their organization. And sometimes we're working on success stories or a vision or how you're going to introduce yourself or introduce the speaker of the event. So those will, in advance, we say, bring those messages in outline form or just in your head, and then we'll shape them together. So they know what the person knows what they're going to be practicing. You're not surprising them in the moment. Now, sometimes we do surprise people in the moment, but we do it in such a way that it doesn't feel evaluative, where we'll say, okay, imagine I'm your leader and I come to you and I tell you, we just lost the project funding. What would you do or say? And we just stumble through it, and then we share feedback, both of us, and then we do it again. And then the other rule we have is for practice that you always practice twice. If you just practice once and you can't apply what you learned from the first round of feedback, the person being coached doesn't feel the growth. So that's true for any of your rehearsals. If you're rehearsing a presentation, you must do it twice. And if you can do it in rapid succession, that's better. So let's say it's a long presentation, like an investor presentation, 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours. You do one practice in the morning, have a nice lunch, over lunch, give feedback, and then do it again at 1 o'clock. And 2 run-throughs in the same day, that team is going to feel phenomenal. Now about feedback. We have a model we use for feedback. It's the 3S model of style, structure, strategy, and that is the order at which we give feedback. And we start with body language and voice because it's the easiest things from our point of view to change. You have complete control over what gesture you use, your movement. You might feel like you don't because you have habits, but you do have control over your body and voice. Then we go into message structure, and we go slide by slide to say what structure was used here, what if you structured it this way, and then we go into the strategy piece of how they handled questions. Having a way that you give feedback on whatever you're giving feedback on is helpful. So I gave you our 3S model, but you could use something similar when giving feedback on a page. Let's say it's a slide design. You could begin with style, structure, strategy, or start with strategy, structure, style. I sometimes like starting with strategy because that's talking about the audience. How do we want to move this audience? What do we want to persuade them on? You can talk more high level before you get into the structure and the style. On written communications, that's often received better. But let's suppose you're coaching someone on how to make a financial model. Teach your system. What have you learned over time that has made you super efficient at putting these models together? And create a clear step-by-step, maybe it's 3 or 5 steps that would be almost memorizable for them. Because what you're doing in that is you're teaching them how to teach others. You're teaching them how they should coach themselves and do it in a very patient, organized manner. Then that last piece, which is more about listening and counseling, it's when somebody comes to us and says that I'm just not confident. I'm not a natural speaker. I'm not good at this. We are never going to say, oh, yeah, I know you're not good at that. We're never going to validate that. Instead, we're going to say things like, why, and what makes you say that? Is that 100% true? You've never, ever been good at this, which is not true. There's never been a human who's been 100% bad at communication. And that's true for probably every topic we could think of. There's no one who's 100% bad at creating a financial model either. All right, well, I hope this gives you many ideas of what elements in the coaching toolkit you could polish up and emphasize, as well as how can you today in your next interaction with a team member reset some things. Maybe you need more practice. Maybe you need to establish a deeper relationship with them outside of work. Maybe you need to talk about those learning goals. And you can get yourself in a much deeper, easier coaching relationship with your team members with not a lot of effort. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed lesson 49. Our last lesson is coming up next on how to change your habits. If you are enjoying all of these lessons, but now you're hungering to turn all of this into skills and habits that make this work intuitive and natural so that you don't have to think about it, then you want to join Speak by Design University. That's our coaching program that gives you private coaching, group coaching with me, group training, self-paced learning, as well as exceptional networking with other people like you. This program is for managers and above, people whose careers are on fire and they're looking to hit their next level, and they want to do that sooner rather than later. Check it out at speakbydesign.com/join. That's speakbydesign.com/join, and you can start with us at the 1st of next month. We hope to see you there.